Why should we defend the Ukraine? Oh, I don't know. Why should we defend Belgium, Italy, France, Great Britain? They're all the way over there, after all. How many wars have started in Lawrence, Kansas? I don't know of any, do you? The wars are overseas, and they have a way of reaching into the United States. China, Russia, and they're not alone, are building militaries against us. Russia's not building a military against Ukraine. China's not building the biggest navy, killer satellites, and so forth because of Taiwan. They're building them because of us.
Powerful words from from Mark Levin. Let's bring in Newt Gingrich, Fox News contributor, former House Speaker. Newt, thanks so much for joining us today. Tell us, what should be the response from the U.S.? A lot of folks on both sides of the aisle saying, you know, this is not our conflict. We don't want American blood lost over this. But there's also this narrative that the Biden administration created this by empowering Putin.
Well, I think it goes back before the Biden administration. The Germans, by shifting off of energy supplies that they had and becoming more and more reliant on Russian natural gas, gave Russia leverage right into the heart of Europe. The strongest economy in Europe today is totally dependent on Russian energy, and they know it, and they have been basically useless as a partner in trying to contain Russia. I think at the same time you have to raise the question, if we were to be passive and allow Ukraine to be overwhelmed by Russia, whether militarily or otherwise, what does that then mean for Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, Hungary? I mean, there are a lot of countries around Russia that used to be part of the Soviet Union, and from everything we know of Putin, as a former KGB agent, he would like to recreate as much of the Soviet empire as he can. So I think that the Biden administration is really trapped in a situation where they have to find ways to both strengthen Ukraine with, and it doesn't have to be American troops, just has to be supplies and equipment and training, and they have to find ways to signal Moscow that the sanctions will be so severe, the economic cost will be so severe, that combined with the military cost of trying to occupy Ukraine's a pretty big country, that the combination of the two leads Putin to decide to go do something else for a while.
The Biden administration is more concerned about the Ukrainian border. Where are they on our border? These Border Patrol agents are up in arms, going back and forth with, right? Did you see any of that video? Mayorkas went to Yuma, Arizona last week. Then he went down to Laredo, Texas. And all these Border Patrol agents are saying, where are you? Why aren't you supporting us?
Look, I did a podcast with the mayor of Yuma after he declared an emergency because they'd had a 2,500% increase in the number of illegal immigrants in a year. But let's be clear, the problem on the American border is not incompetence. It is a deliberate policy of the Biden administration and the Democratic Party to let the maximum number of people into the U.S. illegally with no check for COVID and no check for criminal behavior. I mean, this is a policy. It's not a problem. And as long as Biden wants that policy, you're going to see millions of people come to the U.S.
Yeah, it's sickening, but they didn't count on blowback from the people that patrol the border. I think it's blowing up in their face, and I think the average American people, average American, not Democrat or Republican, has so fed up with what's going on, Newt. I don't think they figured this type of backlash, just like with their permissive DAs. They didn't figure the American people would be this fed up, and I think we're at a tipping point in both areas. But thanks so much for joining us.
I think you're right. And thank you. No, just to say, I think you're right, and I think the reaction to that actress who attacked the dead policeman, where she got fired immediately, that's a sign that the tipping point's occurring.
I hope so. I think so. Newt, thank you.